What if the pain you're carrying isn't because you love too much, but because you loved someone who never learned how to stay? Sit with that for a moment. Because if this hurts in a way you can't explain, if it lingers longer than it should, if silence echoes louder than any argument ever did, then this isn't random. And you're not weak for feeling this deeply. Something shifted inside you when they pulled away, not all at once, slowly, quietly. One unread message, one delayed reply, one moment where warmth turned into distance without warning, and suddenly you found yourself thinking more, worrying more, shrinking more. You didn't lose them in a dramatic ending. You lost in pieces. And that kind of loss leaves a different scar. You keep replaying moments, searching for clarity, wondering what you missed, wondering what changed. But the truth is, the confusion wasn't a side effect. It was the experience. The uncertainty was built into the bond. Your heart wasn't responding to love alone. It was responding to unpredictability, and that rewired you in ways no one warned you about. This kind of connection makes you doubt your instincts. It teaches you to question your needs. It makes you feel like asking for closeness is asking for too much. So you adapt, you wait, you hope, you tell yourself that patience is love, that understanding is loyalty, that if you just give it time, things will settle. But they don't, because distance was never a phase. It was the pattern. And here's the part no one tells you. When someone keeps pulling away, your nervous system doesn't relax. It stays alert, hyper-focused, always scanning for signs of safety. That's why it's so hard to let go. You weren't just attached to them. You were attached to the relief you felt during the brief moments they came close. Your body learned to chase calm. So now, even after it's over, your system hasn't caught up. You feel restless, heavy, disconnected from yourself. You wonder why closure didn't fix anything. Why understanding their behavior didn't erase the ache. Why knowing better didn't make you feel better. That's because insight alone doesn't undo emotional conditioning, but here's what matters. This pain has a logic, and if it has a logic, it has a way out. Nothing about you is wrong for wanting consistency. Nothing about you is excessive for needing reassurance. You didn't imagine the shifts. You didn't overreact to absence. Your reactions were signals. They were your body asking for safety. In a place where it was never stable, healing doesn't start with forgetting them. It starts with seeing the truth clearly, without blaming yourself. It starts when you stop romanticizing the moments they showed up and begin honoring the moments you were left alone with your feelings. It starts when you realize that love shouldn't feel like self-abandonment. There is a version of you beneath this confusion, a calmer one, a steadier one, a version that doesn't feel anxious, waiting for replies or analyzing tone or holding back emotions to avoid being too much. That version isn't gone. It's just been overshadowed by survival mode, and here's the promise: you don't have to carry this forever. You don't have to stay stuck in longing or self-doubt or unanswered questions. What you're feeling now isn't the end of your story. It's the moment before understanding turns into release. Stay with this. Not because it's easy, but because on the other side of this clarity is something powerful. Peace that doesn't disappear. Love that doesn't confuse. And a sense of self that no longer disappears when someone else pulls away. That peace you're longing for isn't waiting in time. It's waiting in a decision to stop negotiating with pain. Because as long as part of you is still hoping they'll become someone different, another part of you stays trapped in the same emotional loop. And that loop is costing you more than you realize. Every day you stay emotionally attached, your body stays in defense mode. Your mind stays alert. Your heart stays half open, half guarded. That tension drains you. It dulls your focus. It quietly shapes your future choices. This isn't just about the past anymore. This is about what you're allowing to define you right now. You learn to confuse intensity with intimacy. You learned that longing meant love. You learned that distance made closeness feel earned. Those lessons didn't come from nowhere. They were reinforced every time affection appeared just long enough to pull you back in. That pattern trained your brain to tolerate uncertainty and call it connection. And unless you interrupt it, you'll keep repeating it with different faces, same feeling. Here's the hard truth. Waiting for someone who avoids closeness to finally choose you keeps you avoiding yourself. You delay your healing. You postpone your growth. You tell yourself you'll feel whole once they understand what they lost. But healing doesn't happen when someone else finally shows up. It happens when you stop disappearing. The urgency isn't about them. It's about you reclaiming the parts of yourself that learned to stay small. The part that learned to overthink before speaking. The part that learned to suppress needs to keep the peace. Those habits don't vanish on their own. They follow you into new connections, into friendships, into the way you see your own worth. This is the moment to break that momentum. You don't need to harden your heart. You need to steady it. You don't need to close off. You need to come back into alignment with yourself. Safety isn't found in someone finally staying. Safety is built when your nervous system no longer depends on someone else's availability to feel calm. That shift changes everything. When you stop chasing clarity from the person who caused the confusion, your mind starts to quiet. When you stop replaying conversations, your body starts to breathe again. When you stop hoping for a different ending, you free yourself to create a different beginning. This isn't giving up. This is choosing reality over fantasy. And reality is powerful because the moment you stop proving your worth, you remember it. The moment you stop waiting for reassurance, you begin to trust yourself again. The moment you stop tolerating inconsistency, your standards rise without effort. Not out of anger, out of clarity. You weren't asking for too much. You were asking the wrong person. And that distinction matters more than anything else. Right now, your system is still wired to expect withdrawal. That's why calm can feel unfamiliar. That's why healthy connection might even feel boring at first. Your body learned chaos. It learned to associate love with anxiety. Healing means retraining that response, slowly, intentionally, without rushing back into what feels familiar just to avoid the discomfort of growth. That this is where courage lives, not in confrontation, not in closure, but in consistency with yourself. Every time you choose not to reach out, you're strengthening a new pathway. Every time you honor your emotions instead of suppressing them, you reclaim ground. Every time you resist romanticizing what hurt you, you step closer to stability. These small choices stack. They compound, and one day, you wake up and realize the ache isn't running your life anymore. That's when something shifts. Not because the past changed, but because you did. You stop looking back for answers and start looking inward for direction. You stop measuring love by effort and start measuring it by peace. You stop waiting to be chosen and start choosing yourself without apology. This is the turning point, the moment where awareness becomes action, where understanding turns into strength, where healing stops being an idea and starts becoming your reality. And once that shift begins, it doesn't ask for permission. It demands honesty, because now you can feel it when something is off. You notice tension faster. You sense when you're about to betray yourself just to keep a connection alive. That awareness can feel uncomfortable, even lonely, but it's also the first sign that you're waking up. This is where many people turn back, not because they don't want healing, but because healing requires responsibility. It means you can no longer say you didn't know. You can no longer excuse what drains you. You can no longer pretend that longing is the same as love. And that level of clarity changes the stakes. You start to realize how much energy you were giving away, how much mental space was occupied by waiting, interpreting, hoping. That energy was never returned in equal measure. And once you see that clearly, you can't unsee it. Your body won't let you. Your nervous system won't settle for half connection anymore. This is where strength replaces obsession. You stop asking why they couldn't love you the way you needed. You start asking why you stayed when you weren't being met. That question isn't about shame. It's about power. Because the moment you understand your own patterns, you gain the ability to change them. This is urgent because patterns don't disappear with time. They repeat until they're interrupted. If you don't heal this wound, you'll recognize it again. In different words, different faces, same emotional imbalance. And each repetition cuts deeper because part of you already knew better. You are not here to repeat the same lesson forever. The discomfort you feel now is not a sign you're doing something wrong. It's a sign you're doing something new. Growth feels unstable before it feels solid. Detachment feels empty before it feels peaceful. And choosing yourself can feel selfish before it feels natural. That doesn't mean you should stop. It means you're moving in the right direction. This is the phase where you rebuild trust with yourself. Slowly. Intentionally. You say what you feel without apologizing. You notice your needs without minimizing them. You stop chasing people who make you feel like you have to audition for care. Each time you do this, you send your system a new message. You are safe with yourself. That message changes how you show up everywhere. Your standards sharpen. Your tolerance for emotional inconsistency drops. You no longer confuse chemistry with compatibility. You don't rush to fill the silence with attachment. You let connections reveal themselves instead of forcing them. And in that space, something powerful happens. You become Grounded people don't beg for clarity. They don't chase potential. They don't stay where they're unsure. Not because they're cold, but because they're regulated. They understand that love without safety is not love. It's survival. This is where belief comes in. Belief that you don't have to earn consistency. Belief that mutual effort exists. Belief that peace can be passionate and steady at the same time. That belief isn't naive. It's earned through discernment, through boundaries, through choosing long-term stability over short-term relief. You're not healing to become unbreakable. You're healing to become whole, to stop abandoning yourself in moments of uncertainty, to stop mistaking intensity for depth, to stop settling for emotional breadcrumbs because they feel familiar. The old version of you stayed because they were hoping. The new version stays aware of how their body feels, aware of when something costs more than it gives, aware that walking away from what hurts is not failure, it's alignment. And once you align with yourself, everything else follows. You attract differently, you respond differently, you love differently, not from fear of loss, but from presence, not from hunger, but from choice. This is the kind of change that doesn't fade, because it's rooted in self-respect. This is the moment you stop waiting for proof that you are worthy and start living like you already know it. Knowing your worth isn't the finish line. It's the foundation. See, it settles in. It starts asking something of you. Consistency, discipline, the courage to live in alignment, even when the old patterns try to pull you back. Because healing isn't a feeling that stays forever. It's a choice you make again and again. There will be moments when loneliness whispers lies, when familiarity tempts you with comfort, when the idea of reaching out feels easier than sitting with the quiet. That's when this work matters most. Because going back doesn't bring relief. It only delays the life you're building. You are no longer the person who confuses absence with mystery. You are no longer impressed by emotional distance. You see it for what it is: a lack of availability, a lack of presence, a lack of willingness to meet you where you stand. And once you see that clearly, your heart begins to reject what your mind once chased. This is where self-trust becomes non-negotiable. You stop explaining your boundaries. You stop softening your needs to sound more acceptable. You stop negotiating your values just to feel chosen. That shift doesn't make you rigid. It makes you clear. And clarity is magnetic. The urgency now is internal, because every time you override your intuition, you weaken it. Every time you honor it, you strengthen it. This is how you rewire your relationship with yourself, not through dramatic declarations, but through quiet follow-through. You choose rest over rumination, presence over fantasy, reality over potential. The more you practice this, the more your body relaxes, your shoulders drop, your breathing deepens. The tension you carried for so long begins to dissolve. That's not coincidence. That's safety returning, the kind that doesn't disappear when someone pulls away. You start to notice how much space you actually have. Space to think clearly, space to feel fully, space to build a life that isn't centered around someone else's availability. In that space, you reconnect with parts of yourself that were neglected: creativity, joy, ambition, stillness. This is what freedom feels like before it feels normal. Your standards don't isolate you. They protect you. They filter out what would cost you your peace. They create room for connections that are mutual, steady, and emotionally present. And when that kind of connection appears, it won't feel like chaos. It will feel like relief. You won't need to chase it. You won't need to decode it. You won't need to wonder where you stand. It will meet you where you are, without games, without distance, without conditions. Until then, your work continues inward. You keep choosing honesty over hope that ignores reality. You keep choosing alignment over attachment. You keep choosing yourself, even when no one is watching, especially then. Because this is how self-respect becomes permanent. The old cycle demanded your energy. This path returns it. You become someone who no longer settles for emotional unpredictability. Someone who doesn't stay where they feel uneasy. One who recognizes that love is not something you have to survive. It's something that supports you. This transformation doesn't announce itself. One day, you simply realize you're no longer waiting. You're no longer checking. You're no longer replaying. Your attention has shifted back to your own life. And that's when you understand the depth of what you've done. You didn't just heal from a person. You healed from a pattern, and that changes everything, because now you move forward with discernment, with grounded confidence, with an inner steadiness that doesn't depend on external validation. You trust yourself to walk away. You trust yourself to stay present. You trust yourself to choose what is healthy, even when it's unfamiliar. This is the version of you that doesn't disappear in relationships. This is the version that remains whole. And from this place, love is no longer something you chase. It's something you allow. And when love finally feels calm, your mind might try to sabotage it. Not because something is wrong, but because chaos was once familiar. Your system learned to stay alert, to brace for distance, to prepare for loss before it arrived. Healing means recognizing that impulse without obeying it. It means staying present. When there is nothing to chase, this is where the real work begins. Not in letting go of the past, but in staying rooted in the present. In allowing yourself to experience connection without scanning for danger. In resisting the urge to test, to overgive, to prove your worth through effort. You don't need to earn what is freely offered. Your urgency now is to protect this new ground. Because old patterns are persuasive. They show up disguised as chemistry, as intensity, as familiarity. But you see through them now. You feel the difference in your body. One drains you, the other steadies you. One keeps you guessing. The other lets you rest. Rest is not weakness. It is regulation. You are learning to pause instead of react, to listen instead of chase, to respond instead of explain. These shifts may look small from the outside, but internally they are seismic. Each pause interrupts a cycle. Each boundary redraws the map of your emotional world. This is how you change your future. You stop romanticizing emotional unavailability. You stop mistaking distance for depth. You stop believing that love has to hurt to be meaningful. Pain is not proof. Consistency is. Prison. C is. Effort that doesn't disappear when things get real is. The stakes are high because your time is valuable. Your energy is finite. Every moment spent longing for someone who cannot meet you is a moment taken from a life that could nourish you. Healing isn't just about feeling better. It's about living better. You are no longer here to convince someone to choose you. You are here to choose wisely. To invest where there is mutuality, to walk away early instead of staying too long. That discernment will save you years of confusion. This path demands courage, not the loud kind, the quiet kind, the kind that says no without anger, the kind that leaves without drama, the kind that trusts itself enough to stand alone rather than shrink to fit. Standing alone is temporary. Losing yourself is permanent. As you continue, you'll notice your inner dialogue change, less self-doubt, less bargaining, more clarity, more patience. You stop rushing intimacy, you let time reveal truth. And when someone shows you who they are, you believe them the first time. That belief is freedom. You begin to feel aligned. Your actions match your values. Your choices reflect your growth. You're no longer pulled by fear of abandonment. You're guided by self-respect. That shift alters everything you touch. Relationships become simpler. Decisions become cleaner. Your nervous system learns a new baseline. Calm, steady, safe. This is not about perfection. You will still feel emotion. You will still care deep. Lie. The difference is you won't abandon yourself in the process. You'll stay anchored. You'll stay aware. You'll stay whole. And one day, you'll look back and realize the pain that once consumed you no longer defines you. It refined you. It taught you what you will no longer tolerate. It showed you the cost of ignoring your intuition. And it led you here. Here's where you stop repeating the past and start honoring your future. You don't need to be healed to move forward. You just need to be honest. Honest about what you need. Honest about what you feel. Honest about what you're willing to walk away from to protect your peace. That honesty becomes your compass. From this place, you don't chase love. You recognize it. You allow it. You meet it without fear. And if it isn't right, you release it without losing yourself. This is the life that opens when you stop loving from wounds and start loving from wholeness. And you are already on your way. And as you step further into this steadiness, something deeper begins to happen. You stop centering your life around emotional outcomes. You stop measuring your worth by how deeply someone attaches to you. Your sense of value becomes internal, grounded, unmoved by fluctuations outside of you. That shift is quiet, but it is revolutionary. You start to move with intention. You notice your choices before they become habits. You pause where you once rushed. You breathe where you once panicked. These moments matter because they are the difference between reacting from old wounds and responding from self-respect. Each one rewrites your story in real time. This is not about becoming detached from love. It's about becoming anchored within yourself. When you are anchored, you don't collapse when someone pulls away. You don't overextend to secure closeness. You remain present, observant, grounded. And from that place, you begin to see people clearly, not through the lens of hope or fear, but through truth. Truth simplifies everything. You recognize effort without chasing it. You feel emotional availability without forcing it. You sense alignment without questioning it. And when something feels off, you no longer override that signal. You trust it. That trust becomes your greatest protection. The urgency now is about momentum, because every time you honor yourself, you strengthen this version of you. And every time you compromise yourself, you weaken it. This is the edge where growth either stabilizes or slips back into old patterns. Awareness alone is not enough. Action is what locks healing into place. You take responsibility for your energy. You choose where it goes. You invest it in people and spaces that replenish you instead of depleting you. That decision alone begins to change the shape of your life. Your days feel lighter. Your mind feels clearer. Your body feels less burdened. You are no longer chasing a feeling. You are building a foundation. That foundation supports boundaries that don't require explanation. And it supports standards that don't need defense. It supports a version of love that is reciprocal, not conditional. And when something doesn't meet that standard, you don't argue with reality. You accept it and move accordingly. Acceptance is power. You stop fighting what is. You stop trying to transform people into potential they have not chosen. You stop sacrificing peace for attachment. That doesn't make you indifferent. It makes you discerning. And discernment is what allows love to be sustainable. You begin to notice how much of your strength was always there. It was just tied up in waiting, waiting for consistency, waiting for clarity, waiting for someone else to meet you halfway. Now that waiting energy turns inward. It fuels your growth. It sharpens your direction. You feel more present in your own life, more connected to your purpose, more willing to choose long-term fulfillment over short-term comfort. These choices accumulate. They shape your future without drama, without force, without desperation. This is what alignment looks like in motion. You are not healing to be chosen. You are healing to choose well, to recognize what aligns with your values, to engage in relationships that feel expansive rather than restrictive, to create a life where love complements you instead of consuming you. And when love does arrive in this space, it will feel different. It will feel steady. It will feel mutual. It will feel safe enough for you to remain yourself, not perform, not prove, not disappear. You will recognize it because it won't trigger survival. It will invite presence. Until then, you continue forward with integrity. You keep choosing honesty over illusion. You keep choosing consistency over intensity. You keep choosing yourself even when it feels uncomfortable, even when it feels lonely, even when no one is validated the choice yet, because self-trust is built in those moments. One day, you realize the urgency has shifted. You're no longer racing to heal. You're living from it. You're no longer afraid of being alone. You're rooted in yourself. And that rootedness changes everything you touch. This is the culmination of the work. Not perfection, not immunity from pain, but resilience, discernment, peace that holds. You don't go back to who you were before. You move forward as someone stronger, clearer, and deeply aligned. Someone who understands that love is not something you endure. It is something that meets you where you are and walks with you from there. From this place, you build a future that no longer costs you yourself. And now the responsibility is yours in the most empowering way, not heavy, not overwhelming, honest, because once you see the truth, you can't unknow it. You can't keep choosing what hurts and still call it love. You can't keep abandoning yourself and expect peace to arrive on its own. This is where awareness becomes commitment. Commitment to stop repeating what broke you. Commitment to build something stronger than habit. You begin to understand that healing is not passive. It's active. It's shown in what you tolerate and what you walk away from. It's shown in how quickly you respond to red flags instead of explaining them away. It's shown in how you treat your own emotions, not as inconveniences, but as guidance. This is the moment you stop outsourcing your sense of safety, because safety is not someone else's job. It's yours. The urgency sharpens here. Every day you delay alignment, you reinforce the old pattern. Every day you choose clarity, you weaken it. This is not about perfection, it's about momentum. The direction you move matters more than how fast you go. One honest decision compounds into another, and soon your life starts reflecting the boundaries you once struggled to hold. You stop waiting for emotional permission. You stop asking if your needs are valid. You already know they are. That knowing changes how you speak, how you choose, how you leave rooms that no longer feel right. You don't announce it. You embody it, and that embodiment is felt. This is where confidence becomes quiet. You no longer explain your standards to people who benefit from you having none. You no longer lower the bar to avoid being alone. You realize that being alone is not the threat. Losing yourself is. That realization rewires your fear. Solitude becomes a place of recalibration, not punishment. A place where your nervous system resets instead of stays on edge. You begin to feel proud of yourself. Not in a loud way, in a grounded way. Proud that you stayed when it was uncomfortable. Proud that you didn't run back to familiarity just because it was familiar. Proud that you chose growth over relief. This pride builds integrity, and integrity builds self-trust. Self-trust changes everything. You start making decisions faster, cleaner, with less emotional noise. You don't second-guess what your body tells you. You don't linger where effort is one-sided. You don't chase clarity from people who thrive in ambiguity. You conserve your energy for what expands you. The stakes are no longer about healing the past. They're about protecting your future. Because the version of you that emerges from this work deserves better than recycled pain. Deserves love that doesn't trigger survival. Deserves connection that doesn't require self-erasure. And here's the truth that lands deepest. You were never too much. You were just giving too much to someone who couldn't hold it. That doesn't make you broken. It makes you capable of deep connection. And when that depth is matched, it becomes powerful instead of painful. This is where belief locks in, belief that consistency exists, belief that emotional safety is real, belief that love can be calm and passionate without confusion. You don't cling to this belief. You live in a way that aligns with it. And alignment has consequences. It filters your life. It raises the quality of everything you allow close. You no longer chase intensity. You choose depth. You no longer romanticize distance. You require presence. You no longer confuse longing with love. You recognize peace as the standard. This is not the end of the journey. It's the shift into a new way of being. One where you don't need to prove your worth. One where you don't need to be chosen to feel whole. One where love is an addition, not a rescue. You carry this forward into every interaction, every decision, every relationship. And the more you honor it, the stronger it becomes. This is what healing looks like when it settles into your bones. Steady, clear, unshakable. You didn't just survive loving an avoidant partner. You transformed how you love yourself. And that changes everything that comes next. And from this place of strength, a new kind of responsibility takes shape. Not the kind that weighs you down, but the kind that lifts you into authorship of your own life. You no longer drift into connections hoping they will define you. You choose with intention. You lead with clarity. You show up as someone who knows what they deserve and TS accordingly. This is where your energy becomes sacred. You guard it without apology. You stop giving access to people who confuse you. You stop tolerating dynamics that drain you, not because you're hardened, but because you're awake. You understand now that your peace is not negotiable. Every decision you make reinforces this identity. You begin to live in alignment, even when no one is watching. You keep promises to yourself. You follow through on what you say you need. You leave situations that feel wrong instead of waiting for proof they are. That consistency builds something unshakable inside you, a sense of self that doesn't collapse under uncertainty. This is the point where urgency becomes purpose. You realize how quickly life moves when you're not stuck in emotional limbo. How much space opens up when your attention is no longer consumed by waiting. Waiting for replies, waiting for reassurance, waiting for someone else to meet you where you've always been. That waiting was never neutral. It was costing you presence, and presence is where life happens. Now you are here. You feel more engaged with your own goals, more invested in your own growth, more connected to what lights you up outside of relationships. This doesn't make love less important. It makes it healthier. It becomes a complement, not a requirement for wholeness. You stop chasing validation and start living from conviction. Conviction changes how you speak. Your words become cleaner. Your boundaries firmer. Your actions become aligned with your values. You no longer bend yourself to fit someone else's comfort. You trust that the right connections will meet you in your truth, not ask you to dilute it. This trust doesn't come from optimism. It comes from experience, from seeing what happens when you choose yourself repeatedly, from watching your life stabilize as you stop engaging in emotional chaos, from feeling your nervous system settle into a rhythm that feels safe. Safety becomes your baseline, and from safety you create, you build, you expand. You don't just recover from the past, you outgrow it. The pain that once defined you becomes information. The lessons that once hurt become wisdom. You carry them forward without carrying the weight. This is where belief transforms into embodiment. You no longer hope for better. You expect better. And because you expect better, you tolerate less. This isn't entitlement. It's self-respect in motion. You understand that love should add to your life, not consume it. That connection should feel supportive, not destabilizing. You begin to recognize how far you've come. The version of you that once waited in uncertainty would barely recognize you now. That version survived by adapting. You now thrive by choosing. Choosing clarity. Choosing consistency. Choosing yourself even when it's uncomfortable. This choice is what breaks cycles, generational cycles, emotional cycles. Patterns you once thought were just part of who you are. You see now that they were responses, not identities. And once you stop responding from wounds, you start acting from values. Values guide you forward. They help you discern what deserves your time. They help you release what no longer aligns. They help you build relationships that feel reciprocal and grounded. Relationships where communication is direct, where effort is mutual, where love doesn't feel like a test you have to pass. You are no longer auditioning for connection. You are participating in it. This participation is powerful because it's conscious. You know what you bring. You know what you need. You know what you will not accept. And that clarity creates a life that feels intentional instead of reactive. This is the culmination of the journey, not the absence of pain, but the presence of self, not the guarantee of perfect love, but the certainty that you will not lose yourself trying to keep it. You trust your ability to walk away. You trust your ability to stay grounded. You trust yourself. That trust becomes your anchor. From here, everything changes, not overnight, not dramatically, but steadily, surely. You move forward with a quiet confidence that doesn't need validation. You build a life that reflects your growth. And when love enters that life, it meets you as an equal, not a rescue. This is what remains when healing is complete enough to live from. A self that is whole, a heart that is steady, a future that no longer requires you to disappear to be loved. And now you stand at a threshold most people never fully cross, not because they can't, but because they're afraid of what life looks like without the familiar ache. You've lived so long in emotional turbulence that calm once felt empty. Now you know better. Calm is not emptiness. Calm is capacity, capacity to build, to feel joy without fear, to love without losing yourself. This is where your life accelerates, not in chaos, but in clarity. You wake up more present. You move through your days with intention. Your thoughts are no longer hijacked by what someone else is doing, feeling, or withholding. That mental space you reclaimed becomes fertile ground. You use it to grow, to create, to invest in what actually moves you forward. You realize how much time you gave to emotional puzzles that were never meant to be solved. How much energy you spent trying to be chosen by someone who was never choosing themselves. That chapter is closed now, not because it ended, but because you ended it. Ending it changes you. You stop negotiating your needs in your own head. You stop preparing for disappointment before it arrives. You stop bracing for abandonment in moments of closeness. Your body learns a new truth. You are safe to stay present. You are safe to feel deeply. You are safe to walk away if needed. This safety becomes your power. With it, you begin to demand more from your life, not out of entitlement, but out of respect for your time on this earth. You don't rush anymore. You don't cling anymore. You observe, you assess, you choose, and those choices create momentum that no one can take from you. The urgency now is not fear-driven. It's purpose-driven. You understand that every season you stay aligned strengthens this identity, and every season you betray it weakens your trust in yourself. That trust is sacred. It is the difference between a life that feels intentional and one that feels reactive. You protect it fiercely. You begin to notice how people respond to this shift. Some fall away. They benefited from the old version of you. Others rise to meet you. They recognize the grounded presence you carry now. You no longer chase connection. You attract resonance. Resonance changes everything. Conversations deepen. Relationships feel cleaner. You feel seen without having to perform. You no longer over-explain. You no longer overgive. You show up fully, and you allow others to meet you where you are or reveal that they cannot. That revelation no longer hurts the way it used to, because you are no longer attached to being chosen. You are attached to being aligned, and alignment has a way of simplifying even the hardest decisions. You know when to stay. You know when to leave. You know when to pause. You know when to proceed. This knowing is earned. It came from staying with discomfort instead of escaping it, from sitting with grief instead of numbing it, from choosing growth over familiarity. These choices didn't just heal you, they refined you. You now move with discernment instead of desperation, with patience instead of panic, with trust instead of anxiety. That shift is subtle but profound. It changes how you love. It changes how you lead. It changes how you live. You stop shrinking to fit spaces that were never designed for your depth. You stop apologizing for needing consistency. You stop believing that love has to be hard to be real. Hard is not holy. Struggle is not romance. Peace is not boring. Peace is powerful. From this place, you build relationships that feel like collaboration instead of conquest. You experience intimacy that feels steady instead of suspenseful. You feel attraction that doesn't come with self-doubt attached. This is what happens when your nervous system no longer confuses chaos with connection. You didn't lose your capacity for passion. You redirected it toward people who can meet you, toward a life that supports you, toward yourself. This is the moment it all clicks. The pain was never pointless. It was information. It showed you what happens when love lacks presence. It taught you the cost of self-abandonment. It forced you to develop discernment you might not have learned otherwise. You don't resent the past anymore. You respect what it taught you. And now, you move forward differently. You choose slower. You choose wiser. You choose yourself without guilt or justification. You trust that what is meant for you will not require you to disappear. This is not the end of healing. It's the beginning of living from it. You walk forward with clarity in your chest and steadiness in your steps. You don't look back to see who is watching. You don't wait for validation. You know who you are now. And that knowing becomes the foundation for everything you build next. And from this clarity, something powerful emerges. You begin to notice how much of your life was spent shrinking to fit someone else's comfort, shrinking to avoid conflict, shrinking to feel loved. That shrinking no longer serves you. Every time you reclaim space for yourself, you grow. Every time you honor your needs without apology, you expand. Every time you refuse to chase emotional availability that doesn't exist, you gain momentum. Momentum is your new ally. It pushes you forward even when doubt whispers. It carries you through moments of loneliness that once felt unbearable. It steadies you when old instincts urge you to reach back for familiarity. You realize now that survival was never about attachment. It was about recognition, recognizing patterns, recognizing your limits, recognizing that not all closeness is real. That recognition becomes the foundation for everything you build next. Your choices sharpen. You begin to see the difference between what feels urgent and what actually matters, between people who are willing to show up and those who only take up space, between love that nourishes and love that depletes. This discernment does not come from theory. It comes from experience, from every moment you stayed when it hurt, from every boundary you finally drew, from every time you prioritized your peace over another person's approval. Experience teaches what words cannot, and the stakes are real. Every day you practice this discernment, you strengthen the version of yourself that refuses to be small, that refuses to settle, that refuses to let longing dictate your life. You start noticing that your energy is precious, that your presence is valuable, that your attention is a resource that deserves careful investment. Every time you guard it, you reclaim a part of yourself that was lost in waiting, that was lost in over-explaining, overcompensating, overloving. Reclaiming yourself feels urgent because time is relentless. It does not pause for confusion, for heartbreak, for cycles you no longer need. You can either spend it repeating old patterns or building a future that reflects your strength. You can either remain tethered to instability or step into a life guided by presence and self-respect. You begin to understand that the cost of staying attached to what doesn't serve you is higher than you imagined, not just emotionally, but physically, mentally, energetically. It drains your capacity to create, to connect, to love authentically. That cost demands action. That cost demands that you move decisively, even when your heart hesitates. Even when your mind reminds you of what was familiar. Even when the fear of being alone rises like a storm. Courage is the ONL. Why bridge across that storm? And you find it in the small, relentless choices. In choosing boundaries over comfort. In choosing clarity over uncertainty. In choosing yourself over someone else's inconsistencies. With each choice, your nervous system recalibrates, your confidence grows, your instincts sharpen. You no longer confuse passion with necessity and no longer mistake intensity for intimacy. You no longer let chaos masquerade as love. From this place, love becomes something entirely different. It no longer triggers survival. It complements life instead of consuming it. It meets you where you are. Instead of asking you to disappear to fit someone else's patterns, you no longer chase. You no longer negotiate. You no longer overextend. You simply recognize what is real, what is steady, what is mutual, and when it arrives, it feels like relief, not exhilaration, not drama. Relief. This is the power of living aligned. You realize that the version of yourself who tolerated inconsistency, who questioned their worth, who hoped for love that never came, is not gone. She is the architect of this new you. She is the one who learned, who survived, who turned confusion into clarity, pain into wisdom, longing into discern.